Hey guys, Christy Shelton from foreverandafter.com, and today I want to talk to you about the difference between food intolerances and food allergies. So after my last video where I shared with you guys about how I got a blood test taken and I started cutting out the foods that I have learned that I'm intolerant to, I started getting a lot of questions about, is this like a food allergy? Can you develop this? Are you born with this? That kind of thing. So I wanted to kind of explain the difference to make it easier to understand. And as we continue this series, I will be able to give you some more details on kind of how it works in your body, how to identify them, and what you can do about your food intolerances. So the first major difference between a food allergy and a food intolerance is that food allergies generally elicit a response from your immune system. So when you're allergic to a food, most people, the most common ones are peanuts and seafood and things like that. When you're allergic to a food and you eat it, it causes your immune system to go kind of into overdrive, producing white blood cells. That's what gives you sort of the anaphylactic response to it. It can close your airway, it can cause hives, depending on how severe your allergy is. People with food allergies oftentimes have to carry EpiPens because if they even come in contact with one of their food allergies, they don't necessarily have to eat it. Sometimes if they just touch it, they can actually have an allergic reaction. A food intolerance is something that kind of blows up all of your systems, if you will. The symptoms of food intolerances can include headaches, bloating, gas, upset stomach, diarrhea, flu-like symptoms. So there's tons of different symptoms you can get with food intolerances. And another main difference between the two is food allergies are generally like an immediate response. It triggers your body and you go into an immediate allergic reaction to it. A food intolerance sometimes doesn't come on for, say, 2 hours. It can be all the way up to 48 hours that you have before your body actually responds to it. So if you have multiple food intolerances, it can make it really hard to pinpoint because you're not going to get necessarily that immediate reaction as soon as you eat something that, like, hey, I feel like crap. Sometimes it's going to be you eat something one day and 2 days later you feel awful. And so it can make it a lot harder to pinpoint, which is why I ended up doing the blood test for it. It just made it easier for me. But there are methods that you can use. The most common foods that people are intolerant to are dairy, your grains, your grain families, especially those that include gluten, and some people have intolerances to certain vegetables. And our intolerances come from our history. So our ancestors, way back when, had certain diets that they ate. So if your ancestors lived on pretty much carbs, you're going to be more likely to be able to eat a high carb diet and not have the effects of, say, somebody whose ancestors lived on like a high protein or a high fat diet. So as our genes have come down through our lineage, they've kind of morphed and they've melted together because we're in the melting pot now, and everything's kind of getting blurred together. So I may have an ancestor from 4 or 5 generations ago that might have had the same intolerance I have to gluten, and that's just something that got passed on to through my genes. Now, when I have children, it's possible that my kids could inherit that from me. It's possible that they could get, the genes from my husband's side of the family for that particular thing. And that's what makes it so hard to find the perfect diet for somebody, because we can give you all of the tools, but if, say, you're intolerant to eggs like I am, most diets call for like eggs and veggies for breakfast or hard-boiled eggs for a snack, and that just didn't work for me. So as you kind of get familiar with your body and you learn more about it, you're going to be able to hopefully identify the food that you're intolerant to and hopefully cut that out of your system. Another tricky part of intolerances is that you can actually develop an intolerance. So a lot of people, when they get on a healthy eating plan, they tend to make a really easy menu and they eat that same menu like every week or maybe every other week. So they're eating a lot of the same foods. Well, the more that you're eating those same foods over and over again, the more likely your body is to develop either an intolerance or sometimes an allergy. And you can do that with medication too. For example, when I was a kid, I was a carrier for strep. So I did amoxicillin a lot as a kid. And when I turned about 21, 22, I ended up having a really severe allergic reaction because I took amoxicillin like I normally do for an infection, and I ended up with seizures and things like that. And they said that basically over time my body had just developed an allergy to it. You can do that with foods, you could do that with medications, shampoos, things like that. Anything that has additives in it, or really anything that has any kind of makeup, you can develop either an intolerance or an allergy to. So I hope that that clarifies some of the differences between food allergies versus food intolerances. If you have any questions, feel free to message me or drop them below, and have a great night.